All right, guys. Welcome, everyone. It is 2 o'clock. Actually, it's 2:03. And welcome to today's Tuesday Town Hall at 2 with KY Shape. I am Robin Richardson, your KY Shape president. So this is installment, I believe, number 4, 3 or 4. I've lost track. We have some really good things going on here at our town halls. And today's session is called a B3, Brain, Body, and Behavior, focusing on some classroom-based physical activity. So as you're loading in, get ready to have your mind blown by our special guest, and Jamie will introduce our special guest for the day. Jamie?
Great, thanks Robin, much appreciated. Hello everybody. Robin, this is actually our 5th Tuesday at 2 Town Hall. So we got one more coming up. No, wait, maybe I'm wrong. 3, 4, 5, no, it'd be 6.
I think it's 4.
No,
4?
This is the 3rd one in July. We did 2 in June. So number 5. So we'll sit here and argue numbers all day.
Okay.
But we've been doing these for a series of weeks. And so welcome everybody. Really excited to bring the most current conversations happening around the world of health, physical education, and promoting student wellness. And today's presenters and conversation certainly plays right in line with those previous conversations we've been having on our Tuesday at 2. Miss Kim Morton is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District. She serves as the Health and Physical Education Director. Kim and I go back a number of years, met at a national conference, and she's just been doing phenomenal work there in Charlotte. Kim still lays claim to the largest physical activity leader training ever in this country. So there's your claim to fame, Kim, right? And back when we were doing the Let's Move Active Schools, Charlotte was one of the early implementers of that. And so this concept around comprehensive school physical activity programs and really equipping physical educators to be, what we do in PE is very important, but also having a more comprehensive dynamic view of what your role is for your school around getting kids active, both within PE and also other opportunities throughout the school environment. And so it's been awesome to watch Kim's work in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Andrew Romberger is one of her staff people. Andrew's going to be joining us today as well. And then Miss Lorinda Deenan is also a principal there in Charlotte as well. And so I've got a chance to know all 3 of these wonderful presenters over the years, so really excited to welcome them. We want to give a big shout out to our Kentucky Department of Education. Through some funding from them is what allowed us to, Kim was supposed to be coming to us this summer. Obviously because of COVID, we've had to shift gears a little bit. And so we're doing some work with them via the town hall. We'll also be doing some additional recordings and supplemental materials and some things that will be specifically available to Kentucky Shape members through some of the stuff that Kim's going to share. So Kim, Lorinda, Andrew, we're very excited to have you. Kim, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Robin, for having us today. We are excited to be here to present our B3 Brain Body Behavior Program to you. And like Jamie said, my name is Andrew Romberger. We have Kim Morton here, and Lorinda Deneen, our other colleague Keith Kramer, who works with us as well, is a big part of this but couldn't attend today. You can follow us. Oh, sorry, Kim. We'll go back to that later. But you can follow us on a number of social media platforms such as CMSHPE on Facebook and also at CMSHPE on Twitter. And we also have a website at cmshpe.org. So today you're going to learn a couple of different things. What is B3? Why B3? How do I get started? And what resources are going to be available to me? So before we get started, we always like to start to prepare the brain, just like when we're with our students in the class, to get their brains fired up. We're going to practice crossing the midline, crossing that sagittal plane to wake up both sides of the brain so we are ready, alert, and attentive for the rest of this session. So if you wouldn't mind, please stand up. And this activity is called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're going to start with 5 reps of one exercise, and then 4 reps, and 3, then 2, and then 1. We're going to do 3 different rounds of this. We're going to start slow, we're going to work medium, and then we're going to go fast. All right? So round 1, We're going to do this together nice and slow. So 5 cross jacks. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Into 4 punches. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Into 3 opposite knee to elbow. 1, 2, 3. Into 2 opposite toe touch lifts. 1, 2. Into an opposite toe touch. 1. Round 2, we're going to pick up the pace a little bit. Ready? Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 punches. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 opposite knee. 1, 2, 3. 2 toe lifts. 1, 2. 1 opposite foot touch. Last round. Let's pick it up. Here we go. Ready? Cross checks. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 punches. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 opposite elbow to knee. 1, 2, 3. 2 toe lifts. 1, 2, and 1 opposite toe touch. 1. All right, now take a seat. And now I think we're alert and we are ready to get our session started. We always love doing Prepare the Brain. We always love Brain Boost to increase that oxygen level and blood flow, to keep our students alert, ready for what's coming next. So B3 is developing fundamental motor skills to spark the brain, build the body, and improve student behavior to increase academic performance. This program started about 3.5 years ago, and we were looking as an intervention to help kids struggling with academics, behavior, or kids that just need to be part of a group, to give them opportunities to do movement-based learning to build relationships and to build some trust and some self-confidence. The results were out of this world. So from that, we were able to grow this program into having movement-based learning schools, like the one you're going to see here in just a moment with Principal Deneen, who did a 90-day makeover at her school here in Charlotte.
So last spring, I attended an ILT session through CMS. And for the very first time in all of my years, from elementary school all the way through graduate school, I actually left ILT training feeling like I had learned and retained information. Not that the ILT training wasn't awesome, but Keith Kramer was there, and he led our ILT group through movement. During the entire course of the 8-hour session, there were strategic places that movement was built into our learning, and I felt like I was attentive, I was engaged. I walked out of there feeling like I remembered things, and for me, the kicker was the movement. And so I knew immediately when I got back to Idlewild, that was something that I wanted to do with my students, and I wanted to go big. So I worked with Kim, Andrew, and Keith to be able to design 2 B3 labs for my school. We have a K2 and a 3-5 lab. We used our Title I funds to be able to purchase all of the items and resources for the labs. And we put in the active hallway decals. And I'll be honest, in the beginning, I was very worried about what would happen when we released some of the reins of managing student behavior and movement in the building. But on the very first day of school, I was blown away by the fact that our children came in and quickly, right away, began using the hallways. You can walk through the hallways at any given point during the day and you will see kids actively using the decals. There's no noise, it's purposeful, joyful noise. And I love it because my initial thought was, what if this disrupts the learning in the other classrooms? I didn't even know they were out there. You can walk through the halls at any given minute, see kids, but anything that you hear is just, it's joy. We have teachers who have created different innovative ways of utilizing B3 in their classroom where they've tied the movement strategically to academics, to academic conversations. We even have a teacher assistant who is using it in our leveled literacy intervention lab and created her own B3 card that other teachers throughout the building are now using. So from our teacher assistants through our teaching staff to myself as the principal, we have done a lot of movement focus this year. And it's been great to watch how our school has been totally transformed in just a matter of a few months. We've gone from having a very tiny makeshift B3 lab to being a premier movement school in our district, and honestly, I feel like in our state. And I think that if you are a principal, if you are a teacher, if you are any type of educator, you have got to increase the movement in your building. You have to figure out ways to be creative with it, whether you have a budget that you're able to use or you don't have a budget at all. There are many things that you can do that cost absolutely nothing. If you can print the B3 task cards and put a little bit of tape down, you can totally transform your classroom and your school building. So I highly recommend and encourage that every school leader and educator get on board with increasing movement throughout their day, because it will totally change and transform the way you do business in your school.
Wow, so that could actually sum up this whole presentation just in that video. Principal Deneen has done so many wonderful things with her staff and at her school in just 90 days. She started her 90-day school makeover in August of last school year. So, and one of the reasons why B3 was created, not just for the academic benefits that Andrew actually discussed earlier, but because of the behavior piece to B3. I'm willing to bet that many of you probably have seen this behavior in many students. Well, if you look closely and you look at that name tag of who that child's name is, that's actually my child. This is a picture of him when he attended kindergarten on the first day of school. And my son, Bryce, who is now going into 6th grade, so this picture is him as an elementary student, but my child, Bryce, was truly the model, the reason why B3 was created. He had emotional regulation issues. He was angry at times. And he actually comes from having a mom who's a movement person, that he was getting exercise and he was getting physical activity at home at times, but he needed purposeful movement. He needed more pushing and pulling and more muscular strength type of activities. He needed to learn how to regulate his emotions so that he would not have outbursts. And I'm willing to bet there's many, many kids just like Bryce in our schools. So that's one of the reasons why B3 was created. And we all know when kids are under stress, they achieve less. We do too. When we're under stress, it's hard to find, where did I put my keys? What was I thinking? What was I doing? It's the same with kids. And we all know when we do exercise or physical activity, that helps reduce that stress level. And here is a picture of 2 neurons to really illustrate how stress affects learning. The one on the left, the neuron is healthy. The one on the right, that's one that's under de-stress, the bad stress. And I'm not going to get into great detail on how information is processed from one neuron to the next. However, those little tree-like branches, those are called dendrites. Dendrites help pass the flow of information from one neuron to the next neuron to the next neuron for it to go into long-term memory for retrieval later on. But if you look at the one on the right-hand side, look how those dendrites have shrunk up. They're pruned, they're not as long. And that's just another illustration. When kids are under stress, they achieve less. And we all know that physical activity and exercise helps reduce that stress level. Another reason why B3 was developed, not only to address the cognitive, not only to address the behavioral piece, but also to address the mental and emotional piece. We put this slide in here, so if some of you want some summer reading, Dr. Nadine Harris, she wrote the book, The Deepest Well. And Dr. Nadine Harris, she is one of the leading medical experts on adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. Adverse childhood experiences, traumatic experiences that our kids face is like neglect, violence, abuse, fear. And Actually, the CDC, the image on the left-hand side of the slide, actually has like a 24 page document called Preventing Adverse Childhood Experiences, if you want to Google search that and get that later on. It's phenomenal. And one of the things that Dr. Nadine Harris has pointed out was to help kids who have adverse childhood experiences, traumatic experiences. One of the best things is developing a caring, nurturing relationship, and movement and exercise helps combat those adverse childhood experiences. Those students who have an ACE score of 4 or more, that means out of a scale of 1 to 10, this ACE assessment that Dr. Nadine Harris had created is on a score of 1 to 10, and students who have an adverse childhood experience score of 4 or more, they're 32 times more likely to have behavior problems. 32 times more likely. Often kids who have behavior problems, who can't sit still, have trouble focusing, concentrating, have emotional outbursts, sometimes get labeled as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, when actually it really could be EDD, exercise deficit disorder. And that's another reason why B3 was created.
So why move? So if you would, this is going to be another time where we're going to have a chance to move around a little bit. And again, we always want you to participate at your own comfort level. So every time you see anything written in blue font, odd numbers, we're going to stand and say that together. And anytime you see anything in black font, even numbers, we're going to sit down and read that together. So blue we stand, black we sit, okay? Until we finish all 10. Ready? Facilitates cognition, develops broad body-brain balance, anchors learning, improves working memory, regulates mood, less fidgety, more focused, decreases learned helplessness, reduces stress, builds class cohesion, and increases BDNF. BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. BDF is activated through exercise. This is an actual protein found in our large muscle groups in the hippocampus of the brain, where memory storage takes place. When we move, when we especially move at an aerobic level, we activate this protein and we can actually grow new brain cells. Think about that. We can actually grow new brain cells through exercise. We know that as physical educators, but imagine if all teachers knew this and understood this. The impact that movement can have on children, like we know, everyone would now know and understand through the generation or through BDNF. If we sit down, it's like a light switch. It shuts off. But as soon as we stand up, we reactivate this to now hopefully grow new brain cells and keep it moving. But the more we're at an aerobic level, we're getting the heart rate elevated, the more likely we're going to create these dendritic branching that you see on the bottom half of the screen to grow those new brain cells. A lot of you have probably seen this before from Dr. Charles Hillman, where he shows two brains of a student after sitting for 20 minutes and after walking for 20 minutes. If you look at the one on the left, it's very blue, a little bit of green and yellow. There's not a lot going on. So you can see there's very little oxygen and blood flow getting into that brain. And these are the times when kids are looking around the room or looking for something else to do, where it appears they're not paying attention to the lesson that's taking place, but actually their brain is scanning to look for something that's going to re-engage them. So even after a simple 20-minute walk, you can see the difference in what the brain looks like. You see more red, orange, more yellow, more blood flow, more oxygen just after a simple walk. That's not even really increasing the heart rate to get it to that exercise heart level, but at least it's enough to get the brain refocused, re-engage, and that is why brain boosts are so important and should be an integral part of the learning day.
So our CMSHPE, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Health and PE process, and getting the onboarding of more movement schools, this is a process that we follow. Every school district has their strategic plan. We ensure that our language on the why B3 is important is aligned to our district goals into their strategic plan. We have a clear defined plan as well. We have a plan on what do the active hallways do, how to train teachers, how to create the labs. When we go to principals to gain their support, we don't just come to principals and say, well, what do you want to do? We invite them in the conversation, but we are providing, here is what options you have, instead of them just coming up with, well, I want to do this, but I don't know how. We say, here's how you can do this, and we support them through wraparound services. So Principal Deneen, you are one of our star principals in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools who did a huge school movement edition makeover in just 90 days. So why don't you chime in and talk about your experience and how we got B3 at your school?
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, and hello to everyone out there. As you saw in the video, which I just love watching myself, I'm sure everyone feels the same way. It's so fun to hear your own voice when you're watching yourself on a video. But honestly, from that video, I hope that you took away the fact that I experienced B3 firsthand as a learner, not as a principal. I was in a training. Keith Kramer, who is not with us on our presentation today due to another commitment, was leading the training. And as I said in the video, I walked away from that training thinking, for the first time in all of my years, I learned, I took things away. And so came back and wanted to do a complete overhaul of my school. But as Kim pointed out in the last slide, there was a lot of planning that went into place. And one of the plans, as you just saw, is training. You have to make sure that your staff, that all of the teachers and staff members, not just our PE professionals, but everyone is involved in the different training opportunities that will give them some insight into how important movement can be for kids, as well as different strategies and resources that can be used. We all know that during our regular physical education program in our school, students are going to get that 45 to 60, or in high school, perhaps 90 minutes of physical education. And we know that we have our recess periods for students. But what our teachers and many teachers who are classroom teachers didn't realize is there are ways to embed strategic movement into the day to make it aligned to the curriculum that's being taught, whether it's reading, math, science, social studies. There's always an opportunity for movement. So Kim, Andrew, and Keith do a phenomenal job of making sure that all staff members are trained properly and are given access to high quality resources that they can use and embed into the regular school day. A few years ago, we had done a training with Kim called Sticky Learning, and our teachers ran with that, and they were totally obsessed with it. And so after I experienced B3 for the first time and came back and told my teachers and staff about it, they were so excited for the training. We walked away last August after a 3-hour session, and teachers were on fire. They were ready to get into their classrooms and do the work and put in the time to make sure that kids were moving. So after our training, of course, we spent a lot of time making sure that our building was prepared. We had active hallway decals installed, which you'll see some pictures of in just a few moments. We also converted 2 classrooms into B3 labs, and you can see the before pictures here. They're just basic classrooms, one in which had a ton of furniture and things. It was almost like a miniature storage room. So we had to figure out what we were going to do with all of that. And we were able, in a short amount of time, to take the resources that Kim, Andrew, and Keith have created, as well as some items that we've purchased through various organizations, and totally transform those 2 regular blank slate classrooms into state-of-the-art movement labs. And what we decided to do at Idlewild was design one for K2 and one for 3-5, so that the equipment and the materials and the task cards and the activities that students would engage in each of those rooms was developmentally appropriate and was designed specifically for the students in that age range. So you can see the photos that are gridded on the left-hand side showcases some of the students in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade B3 lab. And you can see on the wall behind the students in the top left,
That's a multiplication board. So that just goes to show you that there are different ways that you can embed the regular content and curriculum from general education in with the physical activity and the movement. And then on the right, you can see some of the other resources that we have in the room. We have the keyboard, so students are able to move with typing. We have different resources with the yoga balls and a variety of ways in which those can be used with our students. So we have our active hallway decals. And as you heard on the video, I was terrified and had some reservations in the beginning, although I wanted these so badly and we started to install them. My first thought as a general education teacher formally, now on special assignment as principal, was what if this disrupts learning in other classrooms? What if kids get out of control in the hallway and as they're moving, they're loud, there's all of this noise? But I will tell you, and what you couldn't hear on the video because of the music in the background, was if the music was taken away, you wouldn't have heard a sound. You only would hear the feet moving and jumping on the floor. The kids were so thoughtful with the way that they participated using the hallways. And it was an absolute, just shocking situation to be a part of when they started walking in on that first day of school and the students were actually using those hallways. We did not give any training or guidance on use of the hallways to the students or to the staff. We really wanted to leave it up to our students to be able to figure out what they wanted to do. And believe it or not, even as little as pre-K, the students immediately started looking at these colorful decals, the directional arrows, the different the rocks with the water in between, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do with it. And honestly, as long as they're moving, I don't know how they move through the hallway, as long as movement is getting their heart rate up and it's purposeful for them. There's more of our active hallways. And some of these photos are in other schools as well, because we really are a district that is focused on increasing the movement. And so here you see that this is like my own little makeshift hallway. This is in my office area. And one of the things I decided to do about a month or two into our year was to add the decals and stickers, and this is just colorful painter's tape, to the carpeted area within our main office. As you know, being educators, when students have behavioral incidents, the first thing that teachers want is for those behaviors to be taken care of and handled. So they'll call for someone like me to be able to talk to the students. And so I decided about a month or two into the school year that I would not talk to students about behavior until they went through a circuit of movement. Because a lot of times when students get to the principal's office, a couple of different things happen. They're either extremely angry and they won't speak, or they're very upset and they won't speak. But 9 times out of 10, it is like pulling teeth to get a child to be able to explain what happened, why they did whatever the behavior was, and to be able to get them on the right track to seeing what they could have done differently and trying to resolve the problem. So I put these in the hallway, and one of the things I decided to do was, if I'm going to ask students to do this before speaking to me, I'm going to do it with them. So we would go through the entire circuit together, and it's kind of hard to see, but on the picture on the left, you can see one of the B3 task cards on the wall. Each one of the taped off areas has a B3 task card or multiple B3 task cards that go along with whatever the taped markings are. And we would go through and do all of the task cards down the hall and then on the way back. And I noticed that 100% of the time, when I got back to my office with students, they were no longer angry, they were no longer upset, and they quickly were able to calmly explain whatever the situation was that warranted them coming to the office for that day. We noticed a huge difference in the behavioral incidents, and honestly, they started to drop off drastically. So now we go into the classroom, and I will tell you this, as a principal, one of the things that I make sure that I do is I don't ever want to force a teacher to implement something that's new. It's different if it's something that's driven by the district, like a curriculum choice. But when we are doing different initiatives in our building, I want teachers to enter at their own comfort level, because you always have a bell curve when you're dealing with implementation of initiatives. You'll have people who are eager, people who really don't want change or they're afraid of it, and then you have people right in the middle. And so what I did when we started B3 at the school is I told the teachers, you all get the B3 task cards, enter at your own comfort level. We had teachers that started off very slowly with maybe one B3 task card at a time. We had teachers that wanted to totally transform their classrooms, as you can see right here. And I'll let you know that Donna, the teacher featured here, has been teaching for 39 years. I know she looks like she's not even possible that she could be teaching 39 years. But if a teacher in their 39th year of teaching kindergarten is willing and open to trying new things like this, you know it has to be something that's good. So I started featuring our teachers on our social media sites and in our weekly newsletter to highlight anyone that was taking that risk. Because when you are taking a risk and stepping out of your comfort zone, you want to know when you're doing great things, but you also want some feedback on how it's working, and you want ideas on what you can do to continue making it better until you get it to the way you want it in your classroom. And I will tell you that by December, we had almost 100% of our teachers who had something B3 on the floor or in the classroom. And by the time January rolled around, we were at 100% completely. Even our teacher assistants were implementing B3 when they were working with students. And so I will tell you, as a principal, there's nothing better than watching an entire group of people come together and rally around something, not just that I believe in, that is actual proven facts and science behind making a difference and a positive impact for kids. And so all of the work that you saw in our school would not have been possible without the team of Andrew, Keith, and Kim. They were side by side with me, listening to my vision for the school and my own story of who I was as a student, because I was Bryce. I had to be up moving constantly. And I didn't realize that I needed that as a student until I was 39 years old. And so to go that many years of your life not knowing why you don't really enjoy being in a classroom, and you don't retain information the way that maybe other people do, I figured that out, and I knew immediately that I did not want any student in my building to have to get to my age and have to figure out what it was that makes them want to continue learning and growing. So you can see these pictures on there of Andrew and Keith cutting out all of the active hallway decals, and Kim is probably laying them on the floor upstairs or in another part of the building. But the three of them were absolutely incredible. And they didn't just do this at my school, they did it at multiple schools last summer. And so definitely takes a team. Very grateful for the work that they've put in and the commitment that they've made to helping principals like me make such a great change in our school building. And so right here you can see during our awesome remote learning time between March and the end of the school year, the craze all over the internet were the Bitmoji classrooms. I'm sure many of the teachers watching now probably created those themselves. And I was shocked in May when two of my third grade teachers reached out and sent this to me. They had taken our B3 lab, the 3-5 lab, and basically recreated it using the Bitmoji applications. And everything that you see in this classroom is interactive. You can click on any of the B3 task cards, you can click on anything on the whiteboards, and it will take you to websites and direct links to areas where you can do the B3 at home. And they designed this for our entire school to use, and it was one of the things that we implemented during remote learning so that all kids still had access to our B3 lab, even though we weren't on campus. And so here is the biggest part of this story, because yes, kids are moving. Yes, it's helping kids learn. Yes, it's making a difference in our school, and it has, continued to improve our school culture. But that number 64 right there means a lot. 64% reduction in incident reporting last year alone. So we looked at our January 2019 data to January 2020, and we had already decreased our incidents and suspensions. And that incident reporting of 64% reduction, really, it made me want to cry as a principal to think that how many years have we gone through school and had students who were called to the office or removed from a classroom to have some behavioral counseling, only to know that if we had given them some autonomy and some flexibility with being able to move in the classroom, what a difference that would have made. 30 to 45 minutes of physical activity a day is not enough. 60 minutes of physical education once a week is not enough. Kids need to be moving constantly. They need to have purposeful, strategic movement that can happen all throughout the day. And as I've told my staff, when your kids move, you move. We all need to be moving with them. If we want them to be good readers, we read. If we want them to be good mathematicians, we model math strategies. So if we want them to be able to get up and move and make a difference in their physical body, their brain structure, their mental state, their stress levels, their emotional levels, we have to model and practice that with them. And moreover, we have to make that opportunity available to them on a consistent and frequent basis. So I'm so beyond proud of every one of the teachers and staff members at Idlewild Elementary for not just buying in and getting excited about our 90-day school makeover movement edition, but for actually loving it, being a part of it, and making it come to fruition, because it's been one of the most remarkable things I think we've ever done in our school. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that's been done, or more grateful to Kim, Andrew, and Keith for everything that they've done to help make it possible for us at the Eagle's Nest.
So like Lorinda was saying, we have so many different examples of how this is impacting students in a positive way. This one here that you're about to see is a writing sample from one of our schools that was doing a before school B3 program with selected students who, like we talked about earlier, maybe had behavior type problems, maybe had some academic deficiencies, or maybe just need to be part of a group. So with this select group of students, this writing sample comes from one of them, and it was handed to us by a facilitator who said that on the days that this student did not get B3, this is what one of her writing samples looked like. It's all over the place, it's disorganized, you can't really read it, and it's not legible. But when she got B3, she was able to organize the information clearly. She was able to write legibly, she was able to then be able to script kind of model what the teacher wanted her to do. And a lot of this is due to that BDNF that she was receiving prior to going to this class. She was getting that 30-minute boost of aerobic activity. Again, no B3, and she didn't even write on the correct lines. And then when she got B3. So it's night and day, the difference in the impact that this has on students. Some of it's academic, some of it's confidence, some of it's just those feel-good chemicals to help them change their mood and regulate their behavior. We all know those students that need those coping skills. And we know that movement is one way to help get these students out of those unhealthy states. The other option we have for you to explore at your own time is we did a B3 exploratory study within the district, and this will give you more info on the positive impacts that B3 is having on our district. So if you click on this at your own time, you can read the report that was completed.
So the B3 task cards, how do they work? My team and myself, we created over 160 B3 task cards. We broke them up into 4 different groups. We have a cardiovascular, we have a balance and flexibility, we have a sport training, and we also have a muscular strength. We have 40 task cards in each one of those groups. The red task cards, those are the ones that are for cardiovascular endurance. Those are your aerobic type of activities. Get your heart rate increased. So the red cards, cardiovascular. The cards also contain a symbol in the right-hand corner. This is for not only teacher use, but for student use as well. So we want to make them very user-friendly with the cues, with the color, with the symbols, and of course with an image. So in the upper right-hand corner is the symbol. This one is the muscular strength symbol. Then we also added a self-reflection, a self-assessment type question, especially for our older kids who might be using them. So if you completed a task, some of these cards will say, well, how many toe taps did you complete? How many cups did you stack? It's a self-assessment type question. Now, this is where you're really going to look like a rock star as a teacher who's implementing them in the classroom. Often, teachers have told me, yeah, when I do this movement, my principal may come in and say, what are you doing? You need to be focused on the reading instruction. You need to be focused on the math instruction. But what she or he can say now is, well, this B3 task card, it's not a break from learning. It is learning. I'm getting kids into a state that is prepared for learning to take place. In the bottom right-hand corner, these are the symbols to what sensory systems the task card is addressing. So let's say a principal comes in and I'm doing foot trace shapes, and the principal says, well, Miss Morton, what are you doing? I go, well, we're doing a B3 task card so that we're addressing the vestibular and visual systems for my students to have a better state for learning to take place. Or it might have proprioception, tactile. It's addressing purposeful movement to hopefully develop the underdeveloped sensory systems that a lot of our kids have. So in that bottom right hand, that's more of a teacher use and being more purposeful on what cards you're going to use to hopefully address some of those emotional states that kids might be having. So how do we start up a B3 at, let's say, Lorinda's school? First, we went on campus and we discussed, what spaces do you have, Lorinda? Do you have an empty classroom? Sometimes our B3 labs are even in a media center or a mobile unit. Then we said, okay, we got to print off these task cards. We have 160 task cards that we created for Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and guess what? Kentucky SHPE members, you're going to have free access for those as well. And of course, not only did we locate space, but we also talked about, okay, once this happens, we got to train our teachers as well. And that's why we talked about that quality training in the beginning. But the things that you have to do is locate space, print off the B3 task cards, or we had a bunch of task cards that our graphics department created and we gave a set to every teacher. Then you want to gather B3 materials and then set up if you're going to be creating labs. Painter's tape is going to be your best friend. You really could do a B3 program in less than $20 per teacher. B3 tape, you've got the task cards, even less than $20. There's so much task cards that don't even use equipment. So some of the pictures that you saw that Lorinda had at her school for her B3 labs, she addressed earlier that she used her Title I funding. We actually wrote up the Title I proposal to be able to use the Title I funding that was aligned to her school improvement plan to be able to purchase those materials. So in her situation, she was able to use Title I funding. In other school situations, they don't have that funding. We just kind of put together stuff with painter's tape and some just other kind of like household equipment type items. And then this last piece was, well, who do you serve? Lorinda wanted to serve all her students. In some schools, they just do a B3 maybe morning program, maybe a middle of the school day program, maybe they rotate B3 within all their special areas, music, PE, art. So it depends on what the principal and the blueprint of the school and what they can do to make it viable. So that who to serve, sometimes if it was a select group of students, we would use this sensory checklist that we would give to teachers, and they would identify students that may have some sensory processing disorders. And the sensory checklist, if you look closely, if they have tactile issues, those are some of those look fors. They're touching harder than necessary. They like to chew or suck on clothing. Those are the ones that actually, chew on their name tags, chew on their shirt sleeves. Proprioception, that's the one that they're more aggressive. They bump into classrooms. They have that, spatial awareness issues. Vestibular, those are the ones that can't, like they slump in their chair. That's that balance. That's that core vestibular balance that's weak. They fidget a lot. And I know that you guys already are thinking of kids that, yeah, I know kids that are tactile. I know kids that have vestibular issues, proprioception issues. And then we have visual issues as well. So that's kind of like the checklist that teachers will check off saying, hey, maybe these kids would benefit from a B3 lab. But really, all kids benefit from a B3 lab if your school can do it, like Lorinda's. Recommended materials, again, here is just easy, non-expensive materials that you can create your own B3 lab. Many PE teachers have some of these things in their closet that maybe just 2-3 hula hoops, a few yoga mats, maybe put some sand in some milk jugs to have some weight, kind of like a medicine ball. Use tons of index cards. And again, painter's tape is your best friend. You could buy a roll of colored painter's tape on Amazon. I think it's labeled like masking tape, but it's really painter's tape when you look at that picture. So I think in Amazon it says masking tape, but it's colored painter's tape that will actually come to your doorstep. It's phenomenal. I think Lorinda bought so many rolls that she just put in her office, and teachers were just taking them at their own will and setting up, those ladder drills, lines, arrows that they put in their own classroom. So where are we going next with B3 in this remote learning world of COVID-19? In our district, all our kindergarten through second grade students are going to be receiving iPads. And what we did was, this is amazing actually, and Andrew Romberger is the one who took the lead on this, but we spoke to our technology department and we said, hey, how can we have our B3 task cards automatically preloaded, installed onto our kindergarten through second grade iPads? Now we have, 11,000 students in every grade level. So if you do the math, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that's, thousands of students that are getting an iPad with this preloaded B3 icon that when a student touches that icon, it loads a slide deck with our B3 task cards. But instead of just the task card, we have, that's Andrew's daughter right there, a GIF, an animated movement to show how to do that card so that kids at home at such a young age, or guardians that can say, okay, I can actually help my kids too in doing some of these B3 activities, even in a remote learning world. So that sums up our presentation. I think this image on the left is just pure joy. That's just a student that is in a great state for learning. I mean, if you have a kid spin in one of those red bowls and then go into the classroom, she's not angry, she's happy. Movement is not a break from learning, it is learning. So please join our CMSHPE group Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. I added Principal Deneen, her Twitter feed too. Amazing stuff. She truly is a principal model on how to do this in an elementary school. So we really thank you for the opportunity to listen in on this Kentucky Town Hall. And I'm going to bring it back to Jamie Sparks or Robin.
Hey, Kim, we do have some questions below in the chat box. I didn't know if we had a few minutes to answer it or if our time.
Nope, we're good.
No,
Please.
we're good.
Yep.
I'll try to go through them as they were coming up. So earlier you were talking about using Title I funds for it, and someone was asking about the justification for using Title I funds.
Yes, so I'm not sure how every state does that, but our district, whenever we do a request for funding using our Title I budget, we have to complete a pretty lengthy questionnaire. And some of the questions on there require you to be able to tie in the various indicators and goals from your school improvement plan into why the funding source of Title I would need to be used. So in our state, or our county, I should say, we're all using IndaStar. And I don't know if Kentucky uses that platform for their school improvement plans, but basically IndaStar has over 100 different indicators that have been proven to lead to school success. Our district has selected 5 indicators for schools, and out of those 5 indicators, there's one that deals specifically with social emotional learning. And so I knew right away that I wanted to make sure that all of the work we're doing with our movement focus this year, because it was such an intense focus that we were going to put in place, that it was captured in our school improvement plan. So I wrote different strategies within that indicator on social emotional learning that tied into our active hallway decals, the B3 training, the B3 labs, all of the work that Kim, Andrew, and Keith were going to do to support our school. And so it was very easy for me when I was writing our request for funding. Kim and I worked on making sure that we took the exact information from that IndaStar goal of our school improvement plan and embedded that into the request for funding, because that's what we were using it for. And so it ties in very nicely with the social emotional piece. And honestly, I would be happy to help any principal out there, and I know Kim would too, if they had questions about how their goals might align to it in order to utilize the Title I funds. We could definitely help them out with that.
Good. All right. Great. Next question, I think it would be probably directed to Kim or to Andrew. How did you guys get principals to buy in and get them on board?
If you just explain the why on it, it kind of sells itself. However, we started small and we built the B3 program into 1 or 2 schools about 2 or 3 years. We're going on year 4. About 3 or 4 years ago, we started out with 1 school, 2 schools only. And then that principal would then talk to another principal. And then that principal would talk to another principal. So it all evolved organically, and getting 1 principal to buy in then helps get another principal to buy in. And what would occur was, to buy in another principal, sometimes a principal would go to one of those movement schools to see it really in action.
Yeah.
So it helps having these model pocket schools like Idlewild. Now, I think she had 3 or 4 principals go to her school just this past year to see what it looks like. And if you see what it looks like, then all of a sudden they're calling us. We're not going out and saying, hey, principal, please do this. Principals are coming to us now. They're saying, we want to make this happen. How can we make this happen? I've been at Lorinda's school. I love those stuff that she's doing. I want this at Berry Hill. I want this at Charlotte East. So that's how it's been evolving. We have over 110 elementary schools in our district. And I would say we have 18 solid movement schools that are spread out throughout our district. Lorinda's taken it to another level. She's like the model, as you could tell that she went all in. If she's going to do something, she's doing it all in. So it just helps having 1 principal actually advocate to another principal.
Yeah, and I know that I worked in CMS years ago, and I know at one point there was a big dig for Eric Jensen. He came and did some presentations there, and so there was by then, so there were some small little, nothing as elaborate as that, as Idlewild, learning labs happening. And so there were things happening there, because I do remember us trying to do one at the school that I was at, trying to find the space, trying to find, a room to do that in, and kind of lay that out, even if it was on like the stage of the gym and shut the curtain where the rock wall was and type thing. So I know that piece kind of was in pre that, but the fact that you guys are there to push it and have it very specific, because before it was very general, it wasn't this very specific program, which I think absolutely has to help move it forward and get it into more schools. I guess the next question too, and maybe Andrew can answer this one too, they were piggybacking off of that question about how do you get your staff on board to do this, and how do you, and to further that, how do you, maybe Linda can do this, do they have the option not to participate in it, choose not to do it?
Yeah, so honestly, like at my school, it was enter at your own comfort level. Like if you did not want to do B3, you did not have to. And honestly, the first month or two, there were several teachers that did not do anything B3 related. They loved the training, but they were so overwhelmed with everything else that was going on, with new curriculum adoption, you know, changes to like maybe a planning structure or data-driven instruction model, that they didn't implement anything B3. But as they started seeing their colleagues utilizing it, and they were being featured on our social media sites and in our newsletters, they started to think, well, I could do that. It looks simple enough. It's quick, it's easy, it's something I can add in. And it really just kind of caught on like wildfire at my school. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't ever want to push an initiative on a teacher. Teachers' plates are already extremely full. They have the hardest job of anyone around. So I never want to add anything more to their plates. And so I think the best thing for them is kind of like what Kim said with the other principals. When you see it in someone else's classroom or in someone else's school, you start to envision how it could look in yours. And it gives you that buy-in because it's something that you've internalized and you want it to be your own.
Kim, Andrew, you guys have talked about, and even Lorinda spoke to this, as far as adult learning, right? You practice, you modeled this on a Zoom call for us. Lorinda recognized the effect that even in teacher trainings, these concepts are important, right? Sometimes we know what works, but we even don't do it when we teach other teachers. What about that middle school, high school? Any success there, or anything's happening even on a smaller scale related to middle school, high school implementation?
So when I first met Lorinda, I did a presentation called Sticky Learning, and Sticky Learning consists of 6 practices that you can do in your classroom to help kids retain that content. Sticky Learning has movement embedded as one of the principles, as one of the ways that kids retain information. So in the middle school and high school, I am really teaching those teachers, science teachers, the CTE teachers, on how to use more movement to be able to teach your content, whether it's reviewing content or whether it's introducing content. And it's more of a personalized learning using movement into those classrooms. So you're not going to see like a red bowl. You're not going to see like, you know, foot trace shapes, but you are going to see in our middle school and high schools, those teachers who understand the powerful way movement helps retain information, of using purposeful movement, brain boosts, but really using movement to teach academic content, and not just that stand and deliver, sterile environments, desks and rows. It's really moving them into more of a personalized learning environment using movement to help kids retain information.
But to Jamie, to piggyback that a little bit, we were in the process before COVID hit of starting a pilot program at a middle school to do some of this, some of this 0-hour type PE and more purposeful PE with students who were experiencing the same type of issues that we were seeing at the elementary level. However, that got put to a halt because of what occurred. We're hoping to revisit that once we're able to get back in person. So we do have a lot of middle school principals interested, and then hopefully that'll advance to high school as well. It's just a matter of time before this progresses to all levels, you know. And to also go back on something earlier that asked about teacher buy-in, you know, one of the things we always say is just try little things like brain breaks and brain boosts and prepare the brain activities first before diving into the cards or diving into purposeful breaks and activities. Because if they try to prepare the brain and see some of the benefits that just a 30-second, 1-minute activity does for their students, then they're more likely to add the other additional things as they go along. And then once they start doing that, it becomes part of the norms of the classroom, then it just takes off. It's just a comfort level more than anything. A lot of times they're scared, but then once they try and dip their toe in it, we haven't had one teacher turn back. So that we can say.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. Kim, if you'll go ahead and advance the next slide. I think you're on screen share right now. So this is our 5th one. First week, we started off with Shape America reentry considerations. The next week, we had Superintendent of the Year, Brian Kreisman, that came and told us from a superintendent's level many of the things so it's a nice thing to hear about this catching on in education. While we seem to call this innovative, it's really things we've known for a long time. Our education system just hasn't supported this style of learning. So I think we're learning and seeing leaders like Lorinda and like Dr. Kreisman that are really starting to come to the table and reimagine education, right? And you're hearing that phrase a lot. The following week, we dealt with Health Moves Minds. Last week, we took a deep dive with health education. And this week, brain body behavior. We kept week 6 open. And so we're now here to announce next week, we have 3 panelists that will be on our Tuesday at 2 Town Hall. We're pleased to welcome Ms. Felicia Smith. Felicia is Assistant Superintendent of Instruction and Learning for Jefferson County Schools. And Felicia is a former DOE person, was recently considered for our state commissioner position. Just a phenomenal person. She's going to talk to us about NTI 2.0 because what we know that's happened this month is there's a growing tendency for virtual academies, virtual learning. In Kentucky, for our Charlotte folks, we call that non-traditional instruction. So our NTI 2.0 is coming. It's a reality for a lot of places because we're still navigating COVID. So next week, we're going to focus on virtual learning opportunities, virtual learning academies, and NTI will be a focus. We're very pleased to welcome CEO of Shape America, Ms. Stephanie Morris, as well as Brian DeVore with Open Phys Ed. So we'll have a great conversation all around virtual learning next week, and we look forward to inviting everyone back. We appreciate, again, Lorinda, Kim, Andrew, thank you for sharing the awesome stuff that's going on in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. We appreciate you joining us. And with that, one more slide, Kim. We're going to, if you're looking for your PD certificate, you can always go down and find the archive of these on the town hall site, on our website. But there, if you have the QR code, you can scan the QR code right now and access your PD certificate. If you're an active member of Kentucky Shape, then you'll be able to download that directly. President Robin, any closing thoughts for us?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming and joining us in this conversation. Like to do some follow up with our 3 guests about how this looks for them when we go back to school in the COVID era. Like, I know they will change some, but we're just curious about what that would look like, because as we try to maybe begin some of this process, it'd be nice to see kind of how you guys adapted being in this new situation and social distancing.
We'll be happy to. B3 on the Go app is one of our ways.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thank you.
great Tuesday.